So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I'm your co-host, Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And for this episode, we're going to go over an iconic character, an iconic game franchise, and a game in particular, not only that we played a lot when we were younger, but also inspired the combat for many of the games that we play today. This is the game room where it happens, and we are covering the Batman Arkham series, specifically Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, but we will dive into a little bit more than that on this episode.
Yeah, what a legacy that the Arkham games have just left on the gaming landscape in general. So excited to unpack all of that with you here this evening, Eric, as well as our audience. So welcome in any brand new listeners as well as returning listeners to the Wait For It podcast. This is our recurring episode, The Game Room, where it happens, where we discuss a game either from our past, tackle some new games, or play something totally out of our wheelhouse. But as Eric mentioned, we will be reminiscing, for the most part, very fondly about the Arkham series. We will dive into some of the games that Eric has not played, that I have played. I, for some reason, have been very much keeping up with the Suicide Squad debacle. And oddly enough, Eric, it just so happened that today, the day of recording, January 14th, I believe this is right around the time the Suicide Squad game is shutting down, where we got a big chunk of lore regarding this Batman. So it's crazy that we are actually recording this on this day, that just so happened to coincide with that coming out, which is just, again, crazy. So we're going to discuss all of this, but let's take it back, Eric, right? The year is 2009, where I am working at GameStop at the time, and I pre-order a copy of a game that we have been keeping up with via, it was probably Game Informer at that time, Game Trailers, which was a website and a YouTube page at that time, and a game that just looks absolutely incredible, with a character that also, in this time frame, you know, we've seen The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, that's this era, and we just have Batman fever, right? And we're ready to play this game. I remember picking up my collector's edition copy of Arkham Asylum. It's the one with the Batarang. I wish I still had that thing. Really, really cool. Not sure which copy you picked up, but we load this into our 360, and it is just a revolutionary game when it comes to combat, when it comes to visuals, setting. Obviously the voice acting is top tier, which I'm sure we are going to mention. But Eric, let's relive a time, a simpler time, if you may, when the Xbox 360 in our eyes, you know, was reigning supreme, and this incredible game comes out and, you know, changed everything.
Yeah, so Arkham Asylum specifically was obviously the game that started it all back in 2009, and this was a game, Phil, and a character that I was excited about, and it seemed really interesting, but I was still like, I've never been the biggest Batman fan. I've always been the biggest fan of his rogue gallery, and that's really what I think made this game so appealing when it first came out. And then we'll talk about the madness that is Arkham City as a follow-up. I think those two are 1A, 1B, honestly, when it comes down to comparisons with each other. But they both offer, and Arkham Asylum specifically started it off offering that rogue gallery, that look into those other villainous characters, and ultimately, you're fucking Batman, dude. Like, that's gotta be the coolest thing ever. If that isn't, your game's not gonna work. And what they did with the combat, the detective skills, the stealth, the gadgets, all of those things just were perfectly laid out in that Asylum setting, and I really enjoyed the gameplay. That really cannot be understated. Were these stories like masterpieces? No, but within the confines of Gotham and what was going on and Batman as a character, they really lend themselves to a video game.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned story. I think Arkham City is certainly the strongest, which we'll get to in a little bit in terms of story. But yeah, I think because the combat is so good, and as well as the setting of Arkham Asylum, the backdrop, a lot of people do tend to kind of just forgive or try not to remember how bad the ending is for Arkham Asylum. So we'll talk about that as well. But yeah, in terms of a starting point and then a follow-up, I don't know many other games between Asylum and City that would be held in like a similar regard. Probably Uncharted 2 to 4, like at least that I can think of. Maybe maybe going from the game before Skyrim. I know the game before Skyrim was also very, very popular, but like when we're talking about games released in in that quick of a time frame, like Arkham City came out a couple years later, which was just kind of, now that would be totally unheard of, right? It would take probably a decade for an amazing sequel to come out, but we got both of them within like a 3-year time span, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, going back to popping in Asylum for the first time, and you're driving the Joker into Arkham, and you're wheeling him in, and then he escapes, and you get that first taste of combat. And like we alluded to, the Arkham style of combat is something that still exists today. Obviously, it very heavily influences games that we've talked about in the series, such as Spider-Man and countless number of other games that have tried to replicate it, but no one, I don't think, has really been able to nail the combat aesthetic of Batman, also pairing it with the detective skills of Batman, like the world's greatest detective, right? That's something we just don't see enough in the Batman films. I think the Matt Reeves Batman did that pretty well, but in terms of the other one, it's like a lot of it's more focused on like his gadgets as opposed to him being a really, really good detective. And in this, you really get to see that from like the get-go with him investigating what has happened throughout Arkham Asylum and getting all these clues and figuring out what's happening and what the Joker has been up to. Again, it really is a special time where it's one of those instances where you just have to say you had to be there.
And when it comes to this game in particular, like really trying to get back into it and really get a better feel for some of the things that we loved about it. Obviously, this is a game we played very much when it came out and know a lot about it, but Phil, we did not get a chance to replay these games, close to this episode. Looking back at it, I mean, again, it's easy to say Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and all the rest of the cast were going to do great. The writer of the animated series and Batman Beyond also had credits on this, so there was a lot of moving parts that were kind of working in its favor. But back in 2009, again, this is early Assassin's Creed time. I think Assassin's Creed 2 came out maybe a few months after this, so this was very revolutionary is a strong word as far as what it does when it comes to the gameplay, but it's very impactful in the video game landscape. And I think that alone, honestly, is probably the biggest talking point for the first game, because I do think Arkham City takes what was done in the first one and really elevates it to 110%. Like, I really think it goes that extra mile. But Arkham Asylum, again, great intro to a franchise, and one that I think is just felt in modern gaming today.
Who was your favorite villain in Arkham Asylum, if you were to remove the Joker from it? Because obviously the Joker, the main protagonist, the standouts going in. I was so terrified to go into Killer Croc's lair, and that fight ends up being relatively easy when it's like in the grand scheme of things. But it's just so terrifying because you see him early on, and he is this giant, menacing figure, and like he's talking about how he's got your scent, and you see him like while you're being wheeled in, and that when the beginning of the game you're like, son of a bitch, I'm gonna have to fight that big motherfucker, aren't I? And you just know that it is coming. But you also have the Bane fight that is really, really good. Victor Azaz, who is a character that I just really didn't know anything about. And, obviously you see him very, very early on. So, like, who do you think was your favorite? Or maybe just even a couple if you can't even, because it's just so hard to kind of rank them.
Yeah, I mean, Bane was cool, Poison Ivy as well, but if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Scarecrow. Because I do remember specifically, one of the sequences I remember the most is the nightmare fuel that happens when he is like basically drugged or induced with some type of chemical. And really, that is one of there's moments in that first game that I remember more than anything else. I think when we get to the second one, there's definitely some stronger standouts that I'm excited to talk about. The one thing I will say is I did remember this, but I almost had like second guessed myself that you do a bunch of Riddler related stuff, even though he's not in the game, which
we'll
again
talk
was
about
a
Riddler
nice setup.
trophies later.
Yeah, which was a nice setup for the what you do in the sequel. But yeah, that would probably be my main call out was Scarecrow. But I like them all, honestly.
Yeah, man, because none of the Batman movies, other than again the Matt Reeves one, I think has some horror elements, but like none of them really capture some of the really terrifying villains that are in the Batman Rogues Gallery. Not the way that the animated series is able to in Batman Beyond. Like there are some truly terrifying moments in that. We saw The Killing Joke in theaters, right? Nothing really like that has been portrayed in terms of being like nervous to watch a Batman movie. I've never felt that, but these games and especially being cranked up in Arkham City, as far as like the atmosphere is top tier and really encapsulates what you want out of a Batman game, what you want out of a Batman experience. I would go as far to say, Eric, that to this day, Arkham Asylum and Arkham City probably still belong in the top 5 in terms of superhero video games, right? Like what else would be up there? The first Spider-Man game,
which takes a lot of inspiration.
Right. I would say like when you look at, because obviously we were still in this kind of era where superhero adaptation video games, this isn't an adaptation, but superhero video games were still a little iffy. What would you maybe the Wolverine Origins game, like that game is really good, but like
I think it's really good in the like underrated sense. I don't know.
Yeah, but in terms of top tier, like I don't know what else is up there with this other than Spider-Man. I'm sure Infamous, which isn't like a that's an original property, but Infamous is a really good superhero game.
Maybe Injustice. I mean, I really love that franchise.
That's a fighting game though, so like it's in terms of a story, definitely top tier. But
yeah, a little bit different. I mean, there are definitely some of those games that are here that are beloved. We really
some like
like
the X-Men Legends game. Well, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, probably.
Yeah. That one was really good.
Deserves to be up there.
I'm sure there's a couple. It feels like with the Spider-Man games specifically, other than Sony Spider-Man, like the classics, like you got your Ultimate Spider-Man, Shattered Dreams, Dimensions. Yeah. Those are the ones that are like Web of Shadows. Even people like a lot. I think that's your cup of tea. But yeah, I would definitely say this is top 3 guaranteed. Like especially if you combine them together and you exclude the Sony Spider-Man games, because I think what makes those games really special is the web swinging. Adds a whole nother element. The same way that the Arkham games really dive into the stealth aspect and the detective skills of Batman, which go alongside the combat, which are very similar in both franchises.
And depending on what camp you're in, like I don't think that we're in this camp, but people love Arkham Knight. And it has its defenders, and we'll get to Arkham Knight. We'll talk about it. But yeah, depending on who you talk to, Arkham Knight, people put that in the discussion as well. So yeah, I really did forget that we got both of these games, Asylum and City, within a couple of years of each other.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, they would have had to probably immediately start development. I mean, in terms of gameplay-wise, like, it's still the same. And in terms of, like, visually, I don't think there's necessarily that much of a difference, and I'm sure the setting helps out with that a lot. There's not a lot of bright sets. It's obviously dark all the time. So I'm sure that helped quite a bit. But the fact that we got both of these classics within a couple of years of each other again, is incredibly unheard of. So we were really eaten back then, and we took it for granted. I wish there was a way to know that you were in the good times while they were still happening. To quote one Andy Bernard from The Office, because yeah, we had it really good. Did you get a collector's edition for either one of these? Again, I know I had the Batarang from Asylum, but that was about it, if that I can recall.
No, you were more into collector's editions than I was at that time.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's not a lot of games that I really went collector's editions. I then, for some reason, decided to spend more money on those deluxe versions of games like Back 4 Blood.
Your favorite.
You know, I saw it, this is such a caveat, this is such a like turn really quick, but I saw it for like $1 on the Steam sale.
Yes.
And
yes.
I shed actual tears. I was like, all right, I'm going to go to bed now.
I should get some sleep.
It's rough.
I'll pay for that forever.
But back to your original point, Rocksteady actually was conceiving their ideas for a possible sequel before Arkham Asylum was completed. So that was in some of my research leading up to this episode was something I thought was really interesting, that they developed the story, and that way the game could be effectively connected from one another. And if you kind of think about it, like Asylum had a lot, we talked about the Riddler, had a lot of little Easter eggs to what a sequel could be. And I think that's a great segue into the sequel that we want to talk about. Probably out of the two, I would assume our favorite. And this is something that I thought was interesting because, you know, they kind of turn it on its head. Bruce Wayne is, obviously like in jail now. And there's a bunch of stuff going on. There's like a super prison and all that to find out that we are going to get Hugo Strange. And I personally love that character. There's something about him I really like. And I think the fact that we haven't gotten him live action is crazy. Absolutely nuts. So I know for me, going into this game, I was very excited, and seeing that in kind of the opening of the game and getting an early idea of what was going to happen was really cool. What were your feelings going into the sequel for Arkham City?
Yeah, just take it back a little bit, because I'm glad you brought that up in terms of them knowing they wanted to do Arkham City even before Asylum came out. There is an Easter egg in Arkham Asylum where you can find the blueprints of Arkham City in somebody's office. So, yeah, they were certainly planning ahead. But again, Arkham City also has a really, really cool opening. You know, they throw Bruce Wayne into this super prison, which, okay, let's talk about the logistics of a city, of a prison the size of a city. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way than to just be like, let's give him this part of town.
How did they explain that to the tax-paying citizens of Gotham?
They can't. There's like full-on restaurants in there. Like, it's a whole ecosystem.
It's a whole lived-in world. It's not just like a prison. It's literally a city.
Yeah, they just section off part of Arkham, and they're like, just give it to the Joker. Like, again, there had to have been a better way, but it also has a really cool entrance, or a really cool opening. You know, you're being brought into into Arkham City, and all the inmates and stuff are shaking the chains as you're being led in, and then he gets away, and somehow his suit is missiled into Arkham City. I don't care about the logistics of that. It looks cool. So, and then you see the scope of how large this map truly is, and it's intimidating and it's daunting in like the best possible way. I think Asylum has better atmosphere, but City is certainly the better game of the two. I think this is a game that a lot of people gave 10 out of 10s. It's got a 94% Metacritic score, a 9.5 on IGN. I could have sworn IGN gave it a 10, but maybe that's just incorrect revisionist history. But I mean, obviously both have scored very, very well, but I'm fairly certain this won Game of the Year back then. But yeah, when it pans out and you just see the actual size of the Arkham City, like you find out that it wasn't just a gimmick. Once again, another you had to be there moment.
Yeah, and I do think it did win Game of the Year, which is crazy because Skyrim came out that year. And I think that was a trivia question of ours, actually.
I
believe so, which is very, very sad. It apparently was tied with Skyrim, though, for the highest rated game, according to Metacritic. So that is something to be noted and something to respect, because I don't know that Asylum would have been, if it came out 2 years later in 2011, don't know that it would have been as renowned, where it already had a lot of good graces. It was such a strong intro. And again, Arkham City just takes everything and elevates it and turns the dial beyond the maximum point. And I think that's what I really liked about it. Again, it's a freaking whole city that you get to fight these rogue gallery characters that we've already talked about how much we love. So, for that reason, I think alone, the setting, the additional things in the arsenal of like the gadgets and just the combat, again, being so smooth and continuing to go in the right direction, really, really cool. Never got bored. Speaking of Spider-Man and web swinging, never got bored of flying around the city. One of my favorite things to do was just to get to a high point and just glide. Again, might seem simple, but to me, that was an aesthetic that I could eat up all day.
Yeah, and going back to 2009, Uncharted 2 won Game of the Year, which doesn't surprise me. But Batman Arkham Asylum was nominated. Dragon Age Origins, Arkham Asylum, Demon Souls, Assassin's Creed 2. And and I assume you like Arkham City because you beat that, unlike Skyrim, right?
It feels like I should be mad, but I also can acknowledge that I may have set that up, specifically talking about Skyrim in that manner, and I'm gonna let you have that one. I
don't even remember what the question
it.
was. What was the question?
I would like to just reiterate for any new listeners that I did in fact beat Skyrim. However, I did not 100% complete it. And if you would like to know that story, it will come up every single time.
For the Skyrim episode.
Yes, when there is eventually a Skyrim episode where I relive all of the haunting
and I'll sit here, I'll read a book
details.
while Eric talks to a guest.
We really do need to just have the Skyrim clip just playing of that story, but
yeah.
I don't want to do that here. So no, please continue.
Yeah, who else was added to this? We get Catwoman, like you said, Hugo Strange. Who were some other villains that they were like teased in the first game, but we fully got, obviously Clayface, we get that way down the line. That's a big reveal. But I know there's so many other bosses. Obviously, you get the Two-Face. I think there's more
Two-Face
Two-Face
in there. We get Penguin, Mr. Freeze. Can't forget Calendar Man.
Calendar Man sitting in his cell the whole time. Lots of Easter eggs with Calendar Man. So
yeah, Solomon Grundy, Clayface. Although Clayface, I think, is in the first one a little bit. This is where we put the Mad Hatter, who was axed from the first one. There's also Hush, Azrael.
Azrael. And remember, this has a bunch of DLC where you got to play as Catwoman, I believe Robin. I think Harley Quinn. Am I making that up, or was that Arkham Knight?
That one I think you're making up. This one was Catwoman and Robin for sure, though.
I feel like Arkham City is the one that has the Harley Quinn DLC after the Joker dies. Spoilers, the game is 13 years old. After the Joker dies, Harley Quinn finds out she's pregnant in the DLC. And I think that's where I'm getting this from. So
we'll double check that. It doesn't, just looking at some of the information that I had up, I didn't see that.
Arkham City DLCs. Now, remember when you used to have to buy DLC like on a disc? What a time.
What a time.
What a crazy time, but...
Yeah. No, but again, a lot of character. Ra's al Ghul. There
he makes a surprise appearance, like, towards the end.
Yeah, Talia al Ghul. So many, again. Wood. They, this one also, I think, we talked about Arkham and we brought up a couple of characters, right? This one has so many. Like, again, when I talk about just taking that dial and turning it past its point of no return, like, it just goes all the way batshit crazy, for a lack of better words, and pun intended. So that is, I think that just kind of explains a lot of it, which is why, and we could talk about the endings of these games. I know you mentioned that you didn't like the ending of Arkham Asylum, maybe comparing the two before we move too far forward, but when we reminisce about it, it then opens up the door to questions like, God, how did this all go so wrong so quickly after this?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, the Arkham Asylum ending, Joker takes the serum, becomes this giant monster, as opposed to it being like a really well thought out and, intricate boss fight. It just becomes like a button mash fest, and, you never like to see that happen. Arkham City definitely had the better ending. You get the big reveal that it was Clayface the entire time. Obviously, like you said, Ra's al Ghul is in there, Talia al Ghul, so there's quite a bit happening in there. I think is it Arkham City that has where Barbara has her accident, or that might happen in Origins, because I watched a video about it earlier today. We'll talk about those here in just a moment. But yeah, City definitely has the better ending. I don't think either one of them are perfect, certainly not Asylum, but again, because there's so much filler in there, and good filler, this is used in a positive term, there's so much going on in between as far as the content sandwich that it's so good, you kind of forgive the other things that are happening. And they did a great job, speaking about DLC, which is sadly something we don't see enough of, I think, these days. It was so the play styles for Catwoman and for Robin, they were so unique, which makes what happens later with the Arkham Knights, or whatever the hell. I keep forgetting the name of that game. Gotham Knights. So frustrating in terms of how those characters played, because they had it already done in Arkham City. You played as other characters in Arkham City. I think one of them was Nightwing and Robin. I'm pretty sure there's Nightwing and Robin DLC in Arkham City. So, again, getting ahead of ourselves. But, yeah, they because everything else was done so well, then you weren't really too upset about those endings. So, yeah, to kind of, you already gave a precursor to it, like where did they kind of go wrong? And I will say this, let's transition first to Arkham Origins, because I don't think either one of us played that. I do remember watching one of my old roommates play it, and him getting the shit kicked out of him by Deathstroke. I remember hearing and that's like the first boss fight in the game, and it's like really difficult. And I do think that game, in terms of fan reception, people have come around to it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, Origins is made by Rocksteady Montreal, right? Oh, WB Games Montreal.
Yeah, it was not the same.
It was not Rocksteady.
Yeah, it was not the same Rocksteady that had made the original 2, which already off the bat gave it a lot of trouble with
2013,
fans.
2 years later after Arkham City, so people are like, why isn't Rocksteady working on this game? And we find out why a little bit later. God, we got a Batman game every 2 years from 2009 to 2015. That's insane. But yeah, Origins, what was it about Origins, Eric? Because I think in 2013 we still weren't really like fully paying attention to who's developing these games. We pretty much were just like, do I want to play it or do I not? And I remember this game coming around, and I'm sure working at GameStop, I knew that, hey, this is being developed by a different team, but it just was never something that I wanted to visit, because I think if I had to guess, I want to move forward with Batman and this character, and I don't want to really move backwards. So do you remember why you had never tried this out? And have you tried it out to this day? Still no, right?
Still no. And I was curious as we were getting ready to discuss this episode about Origins and Night and why I didn't get to them. Night is a little bit more confusing, but I think Origins really just comes down to I played so many other games that year. That is the year The Last of Us came out, although I did not play it in that year. But the other games that came out, BioShock Infinite, so that's probably all I played, except Assassin's Creed Black Flag also came out that year. Still,
is that a Black Ops year?
Great question. Possibly. I'm going to look here. But what I will say is Black Flag, hot take, best Assassin's Creed. That's when the Tomb Raider reboot happened.
Oh yeah,
in
you love
2013.
that game.
I played the shit out of that. We talked about it maybe being an episode.
GTA 5 came out in 2013.
This was GTA 5, so I got to play like 40% of it before it deleted my save file.
Yeah.
Call of Duty Ghosts came out that year. That is,
okay. Which it was bad, but we still played it a lot. Well, maybe
we
not
didn't
you,
know any
but
better.
I did. Yeah.
We didn't know any better. Sly Cooper. There was a Sly Cooper game in 2013. Dead Space 3.
I was playing Pokemon.
Yeah. Were we still playing Dead Rising? Dead Rising 3 is on here.
No.
Yeah, ton of games. I really think that had something to do with it. And then maybe the reception of Origins, again, talking about, like, we didn't really pay that much attention to, like, video game companies. Maybe that's why I didn't play Arkham Knight. But I wouldn't be surprised if a similar thing happened in 2015, just off of first glance. But I think definitely, specifically, Origins was just because there was a lot of other better games that ended up coming out.
Yeah, and when you go back and kind of like look into the story of Origins, it's not bad. That's the Black Mask game, as far as the main protagonist or antagonist. And like I said, the Deathstroke fight I heard is very good. Bane is also in that game. So, and I think you get a lot of, you get like the origins of Oracle, I believe, in Origins. But yeah, this was also a time, just talking about like lifestyle. I was also living with roommates, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to play single player games, with a bunch of, with a few other people around. So I could have sworn you played Arkham Knight, Eric. So you never played Arkham Knight, huh?
Nope, did not. And I'm looking at 2015 video games other than Fallout 4 and Rise of the Tomb Raider. I don't know how many games I played in 2015. That was Black Ops 3. But yeah, no, I don't have an excuse here. I think at that point, it had just been 4 years removed. I heard Origins wasn't good, and I just didn't pick up Arkham Knight. Although it should be fair. I mean, it did release on PS4. I did own a PS4, but I also was still, like, flip-flopping between Xbox, and this did release on the One.
Yeah, but you got a PS4 way later. I'm pretty sure it was when I had moved. You didn't get a PS4 until I moved, right?
Maybe I still had the 360 at that point.
Yeah.
Because it released on Xbox One, which is one of the worst
Xbox
consoles. I did,
you did,
unfortunately.
Right?
Yeah, but
the Xbox
again,
One is probably the worst console I've ever owned.
Why did I buy it? There are no games on it. So, you would think that would lead me to play Arkham Knight because there were no games to play. But at that point, I think I had just given up. This was probably a transition year, now that you say it. This might have been my transition year to PlayStation.
Rocket League came on 2015. It's
crazy.
Yeah, well, remember, because we had a lull before I moved where we didn't play video games. I was throwing in some single-player games here and there, but, Halo 5 Guardians certainly wasn't something that we would have played. But then when I moved, we got into Titanfall 2. So we started playing that, and then Fortnite came out, and the rest is history. So now we can't go, we go a night without playing some sort of multiplayer experience, and we have withdrawals. But, Arkham Knight, to speak on that, because I played through Arkham Knight in terms of the main story, and I do not like that game, mostly because you've heard me talk about this over and over again, Eric, you personally. I hate the Batmobile. The Batmobile ruins the gameplay of the Arkham series. It's also the worst kept secret who the fuck Arkham Knight was. Like, even if you didn't play the game, you knew it was going to be Jason Todd. There was no other way that it could be any other character, and he was just a very underwhelming villain. Like, he looks like this kind of like, he even looks like an angsty teenager. Even the outfit is not good. All of the Riddler trophies were done via the Batmobile, so terrible. The way that they explain it away is that how the Batmobile doesn't kill people, because you can hit people with this car. You can just mow them down. But I think it's explained away as it is like a shock, like they get electrocuted, but they don't die, which makes no sense. What if I just run them over? So I don't understand how any of that worked. And then later on in the game, the fucking tanks are introduced, and there's stealth missions with the car. You do stealth missions with the Batmobile, and it is so bad. I will never believe any of these Arkham Knight truthers. It's not a good game, and it's crazy that this game has pretty high reviews now. Again, I think the farther you get away from some of this stuff, and the less nitpicky people get, they can be convinced that a game is actually, really not that bad. And granted, there are many other superhero games that are much worse than this, but you're not going to ever catch me playing Arkham Knight again. I'll play Origins way before I even think about revisiting Arkham Knight. So it's been free multiple times through like PlayStation or Xbox since it's come out. Eric, have you ever thought about diving into Arkham Knight?
No, and it's really because while you're saying that overall it's been well received, when it came out,
9.5.
yeah, when it came
crazy.
out, I remember people that I knew that liked this series hated this. You specifically were the Batmobile hater. I heard people really enjoyed that. It's something about the aesthetic of this game as well. It just didn't have the same appeal to me. Again, the main storyline is with Scarecrow.
Yeah, Scarecrow.
Not again.
The Joker is a Force ghost.
Essentially, yeah. And again, I just think it was too far. I think it was too far to try to recapture that magic. Finding out just through my research that the writing team had changed for this, and with what your complaints were for the story, makes sense now. But yeah, no. Again, it just every time it's come up, I've also had chances to get it for cheap or for free. I don't think it's a game I'm ever going to revisit, to be completely honest with you. I think they really recycled a lot of the supporting cast. There's still more of the rogue gallery. Where's Kite Man? Where is Kite Man?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So, no, I just think, and then I guess the campaign is like also really short, right?
Oh yeah, because once you beat the game, there's a whole bunch of other things that you have to do to get the true ending of the game. So I've never gotten the true ending.
I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate when
Yeah.
games do that. I want to play it and be done with it. I try every time to play a game after it's like God of War is a great example. I always want to play what's after. I know they came out with the DLC. I said I wanted to play it. When I put the controller down, I don't want to go back to it if I feel like I beat it. It's just I feel like it's such an old guy, but that is like one of my biggest pet peeves. So now that you said that, I'm never gonna play this game.
Yeah. They also have the Bat family in this. Red Hood shows up. I think Robin and Nightwing. You see them because you do some missions with them. There's also a mission with Azrael. We talked about him in Arkham City, but he shows up and you do some missions with him. And then, yeah, like I said, the Joker is always this constant presence. So their inability, and the Joker he leaves such a huge shadow. I understand them wanting to fit him in, and obviously, like anytime you can get Mark Hamill, like you gotta get him into the game. But like with him just kind of being like this, kind of weird passenger for the story. That didn't really work. Like, if you really want me to focus on the Arkham Knight, then give us the Arkham Knight. If you're really confident in this character, then you shouldn't have had to also lean on the Joker. So, yeah, Poison Ivy comes back for this. She dies in this game. She sacrifices herself, which I think was an interesting story arc. Catwoman returns in this one as well. There's a point where like the gas that Scarecrow is using has like overtaken the entire city, so you have to essentially like grapple and fly everywhere, and that part's kind of cool. But again, there's a really kind of iconic jump scare with the Man Bat, which is pretty terrifying because it can happen at any point in the game. So when it happened to me, scared the shit out of me. So that I will always remember that moment. And then we kind of like glossed over this, but the outfits are always really cool in all of these Batman games. But yeah, Origins, don't ever want to revisit it. I'm sure we'll get Arkham Knight, never going to revisit it. I'm sure we're going to get some Arkham Knight truthers in our comments, but I have no desire to ever jump into this again. And yeah, I don't really think you should either, Eric. But yeah. It's again, 3 out of 4 is pretty solid. I don't know that I'll ever have time to go play Origins. We're just at a time in our life where we have to commit time elsewhere in terms of like gaming and all the other things, a million other hobbies that we have. So, but I do believe that I would probably enjoy it much more than Arkham Knight. That's for sure.
Yeah, and again, I think this game, there's been nothing up until last year with Suicide Squad, which is in that universe, and then that VR game, which I heard good things about, Arkham Shadow. We obviously did not talk about any of the mobile games. We are not going to. We did not play them. But, I just think too much time has passed where the interest isn't there. And that's I just don't know that we'll ever get anything worth playing again, whether it's revisiting the franchise or any new installments in the franchise. Obviously, Kevin Conroy now gone, RIP. But yeah, that's I think that's it. I think that's it. And that's why it made this particular series a fun one for us to reminisce about on this episode, because we really wanted to fit in, and we're trying to this year fit in a couple more games that we get to reflect on, but also those new games as well that we're going to be playing. So fingers crossed we could keep that mixture going. This is a great start, though, and I'm glad we finally got to the series.
Yeah, so let me just very briefly touch on Gotham Knights, because so at the end of Arkham Knight, Bruce Wayne, Batman, dies. We think he dies. And then Gotham Knights is announced, and, you know, this is a WB Games Montreal game as well, you know, the people that did Arkham Origins. And they make this really strange decision that these universes are not connected, even though their Batman is quote-unquote dead. It turns out he's not. Again, spoilers if you were ever going to play Gotham Knights, I just saved you a lot of time. Even though he's not dead. And I think Ra's al Ghul is the main villain in Gotham Knights, if I remember correctly. Again, me and my buddy Josh played this, and the combat is just so abysmal. Even though, like, they already, once again, they had the layout for how to make this game good laid out in front of them, and they still could not do it. It's so slow. They capped it at 30 frames per second. It runs like a snail. It's awful. But then, like I said, they made this decision to separate it from the Arkhamverse. So, like, Eric was there. We are always looking for cooperative games to play, and this one never even crossed your mind. Like, I wanted to play it because Josh and I don't get to play a lot of games together, and he's a big Batman fan, so I was like, sure, I'll jump into it. But, like, this is something that you and I never even discussed getting, because aesthetically it just didn't fit. The gameplay didn't look very good, which is crazy, because I'll stand by this. Playing as Red Hood is a blast. If probably Rocksteady, you know, the Rocksteady we knew had developed this game, it could have been great. And the fact that it's only 2-player multiplayer. They added a third later. I will say that. But why was this never 4-player multiplayer support? It baffles me. It doesn't make any sense.
There were so many things leading up to that game that were red flags to me, but the biggest thing, I mean, we could go over all of those, like, intuitions I might have had. It's something in Gotham that has nothing to do with Batman. And Gotham is not interesting if you're not a villain or Batman. So why would I play a game where he's, one, not the focal point, and you know, before we knew what happens, he's dead. Why would I want to play that? It's like when the Gotham Knights TV show came out. It died in a season. Nobody wanted to watch that show. When the Gotham show came out, it did have its fans.
Gotham had fans, yeah.
Fans, so maybe not the best comparison, but an example for me, another one where, like, Bruce is a child? We're going to follow Commissioner Gordon and the Penguin and some of these other characters. Like, there was some type of appeal there, but it's just not interesting to me. I like Batman as the character he is, and I like the villains. That's really all that matters. That matters to me. For this game, I was reading that it had stuff to do with, like, the League of Shadows, the Court of Owls.
Court of Owls, that's what it was. They were the main. Yeah, and that is an interesting concept. Yeah, but not without Batman.
One I would love to see them explore in live action or in film. You know, in an adaptation, maybe Batman 2 with Robert Pattinson. Feels like that would be the vibe. But yeah, no, again, some cool stuff. But I don't care about Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin, Red Hood. Like, Red Hood does seem like the coolest one out of the four. I feel like I'd play a
Red Hood adjacent game. Again, not just Red Hood by itself. But, like, if you had thrown Red Hood into the Arkham City DLC, sweet. Yeah. Sounds good. But
yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like, and again, it's nothing against Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin. Like,
no,
it's
all
really
offense
not.
to Robin. No, 100% total offense to Robin. Yeah,
he's the worst. Yeah,
he's the worst character in a really bad game.
they would be fun to play as supporting characters, but they're not main characters. And again, if there was no indication that this was going to be something of a story, like in Arkham Asylum, or again, the better example, Arkham City, where I was going to really, like, enjoy it and resonate with it. And again, it's just balls to the wall action. Like, it just didn't present itself that way. And this is, again, when we're starting to pay, 2022, Phil, that's fucking 3 years ago.
$70.
yeah, one, price, but two, we started being more self-aware of this. So we knew at that time the studio that was making this, the developers that was making this, the history of the Arkham series. So yeah, I could not believe you were like really like sold that this was probably going to be a good time, and I just no, I saw the signs, I guess, but it did come down to I would have given it a shot if Batman was in it. If you could be Batman and it was Batman and the Gotham Knights, maybe that would have been more appealing. If I knew there were going to be specific villains that I really wanted to see that I never got to see before, maybe I'd do that. But again, 2022, the last time I was interested in this particular franchise, unfortunately, was 2011.
Yeah. If they could have at least bare minimum made it 60 frames per second, which should not be that difficult, again, in 2022 when this game came out 3 years ago. Yeah, that doomed it from the start. So,
yeah.
And then
crazy to see that die, and then the Suicide Squad die so quickly after that. It's bad.
That's the last thing I'll mention, because neither one of us played the Suicide Squad. Never will. They're practically giving it away on Steam, and we're like, no, thank you.
No, thank you.
They're basically saying, here, you throw this away.
How much would they have to give us to play it?
Well, it was free on Epic Games, I think, maybe. Oh, no, it's free on PlayStation Plus right now. And we still have no desire.
They'd have to pay us.
Yeah, no, you'd have to give me a refund. If you give me like 2 months of Fortnite crew, then maybe I'll check it out.
Oh man, some rival skins right now would be really fucking cool.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, give me some Marvel rival stuff. So here's what happened.
Give me
today.
Give me that Sue Storm skin.
Would. So this is what we'll end with, unfortunately. So here's what happened today. So a lot of things happened. Do you know what happened with the Batman in the Suicide Squad game that people were very upset about? Okay.
Spoilers for that game.
Yes. Again,
he
doing
dies,
you a favor.
Correct?
Yes. Harley shoots him.
He gets killed. Yes.
No,
I did see that.
I think it's Harley or it's Boomerang, but he gets shot, and this is Kevin Conroy's final performance as Batman before he passed away. So obviously, a lot of people were very upset that this was his last appearance, and he is so unceremoniously taken care of. He actually probably has, because again, I know way too much about the Suicide Squad game. He probably has the coolest mission in the game when Batman is introduced. He starts picking off the Suicide Squad, kind of like one by one. But then again, he is very unceremoniously just killed off. I mean, the name of the game is called Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, granted. But it's just done in such a really, really poor way. Well, again, Suicide Squad is being sunset. No more support. They are pulling the plug. The final cutscene, I believe, came out today, January 14th at the time of recording. This episode will be out in a couple weeks. It turns out, Eric, so you beat the game. You beat Brainiac, and then once again, like you hate, you find out there's 20 other Brainiacs you have to kill in order to get the true ending of the game. Because remember, this is a live service game. It's meant to go on forever. So you find out there's a bunch of other Brainiacs. Well, again, pulling support. It's all over. They do the final cutscene today, and it turns out the Suicide Squad that was killed in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, all clones. All clones. So the original Arkham Batman is alive.
Oh my god.
He is alive, along with the real Justice League. So that's what happened today.
So they didn't even kill the Justice League.
No. No.
It's the name of the game.
So I'm really curious, because this is set in the Arkhamverse. This is
that's
set
canon.
in the same,
right?
So like, was this the plan the whole time? Did they have to just, pivot to something because they totally fucked this up? Who knows? Will we find out? I bet you we will find out someday. I will gladly watch another Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League YouTube documentary a year from now, because I love watching just the disaster that this game has been. So, yep. So again, crazy that we recorded this on this day. If we recorded yesterday, we wouldn't have known that. We would not have known that information. I envy
the version of me that recorded yesterday.
There you go, folks. That is how Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League
crazy.
And so remember the good times. If you are a younger listener and you've never played Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, you can buy them together in the Arkham collection. It might even come with Arkham Knight. Again, to each their own. I hate the Batmobile. I thought it really ruined the whole aesthetic of the game. but at least you'll get two really, really good games. And even Origins, again, has its truthers, and I think probably is the better of the other two between that and Arkham Knight. So if you, for some reason, have never played these games, they are still great in 2025 in terms of visuals, gameplay. If you've played the Spider-Man games, you'll know immediately how combat works because they got it from Rocksteady. So definitely check them out if you haven't.
Yeah, and I'd argue, again, a lot of other big franchises like Assassin's Creed.
Yep.
Again, a lot of that counter.
Didn't even talk about the gadgets, the cool gadgets, the stalking system. We very briefly touched on, but like
very
the fear,
briefly, yeah,
like the fear.
The aspect.
Yeah, the fear. Actually, like, man. What a
again,
time.
being able to get those enemies, tie them up, like that never got old. Dangling them.
Probably suffering from severe head trauma.
They'd always talk so much shit too before you got them. They're like, "Yeah, when that Batman shows up,
here, and then you show up and you
beat his ass,
and then you show up and you break his legs."
Absolutely brutal.
There's no way they're insured.
I will say to finish it, the punches in this game, you felt everyone.
I may have to put a video in. just
seriously,
a 50 punch combo on just a random thug.
Honestly, I should have brought it up during combat. Yeah, no, you literally feel it was so satisfying. You felt every single punch that was landed, and I don't know that a game has ever made me feel like that. Spider-Man's been close, but no, Batman takes the title. But guys, that is it for us. Yeah, that is Arkham as a whole, and specifically our experience with Asylum and City, and Phil's experience with Knight. So with that being said, we got a lot of great stuff playing this year. So if you want to stick around and find out where you can go for past and future episodes, Phil is going to take us there.
Yeah, Suicide Squad next month, right?
Nope.
No.
Stop
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I don't have to play the superhero game that we signed up for.
No, please, God, it's so good. Oh my gosh. Good. I can't wait. Anyway, yes, if you want to find all the rest of our content, catch up, or keep up, you can make sure you click the Linktree link in the show notes of this episode. You'll find all of our social media pages, the most important ones to keep up with being our Instagram page, TikTok, maybe. We'll see. This episode comes out in like a week.
It comes out on the 22nd.
The 22nd, so maybe it's still there. You let us know.
Yeah, you let us know.
So
you won't see clips of this if it's gone.
No, check that out. Obviously, our Discord page, our YouTube channel. We also stream on Twitch every other Thursday. You can support the show a couple of different ways. Head on over Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave us 5-star reviews. That is so incredibly helpful, and we appreciate all of you who have done that already. And share the content. Let people know that you're listening. Let us know that you're listening. We hope to meet even more of you in 2025. It's been a whole lot of fun, even early on this year. We've had a blast meeting some new people. But if you find yourself wanting some extra content, behind-the-scenes stuff, and maybe even a couple treats here and there from Eric and Eric will let you know a little bit more about that and close us out.
Yeah, so all of the things that you could do to support us that are no cost to you, very much appreciated. Continue to do those things. But if you want to go beyond in your support for the podcast, that is where Patreon comes into play, where patrons of the show, Stefan, Breyer, Corey, T3 Cato, and Vintage Macaroni, are helping us out with their Patreon subscription. And in return, you'll get early access and behind-the-scenes exclusive access to episodes like this one. In addition to other perks, there's several tiers you could select from, and we'd be eternally grateful. But again, everything from the likes, the comments, the shares, the listens, the engagement go a long way for lifeblood of podcasting. Continue to do that, and we will keep on going. My name is Mr. Eric Almighty's. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. You didn't have to show that. You didn't have to rub that in my face. I hate you. I hate you so much. I can't even do this. I can't even do the closing. Anyway, we're the Wait For It podcast. We release new episodes every Wednesday, plus bonus content across all of our social media platforms. And all you got to do is wait for it.
So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.